Whitney, thank you for joining us on the Scholarship GPS podcast. Been looking forward to our conversation. Before we get started, if you would just introduce yourself so people know who you are and kind of what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So I am an independent educational consultant. I'm based out of North Carolina, although I work with students all over the country.
Mhm.
And kind of came to this from a background of a homeschooling parent. I didn't have any other background in education, but so I work with a lot of homeschoolers, but I also
Okay.
work with public school students, private school students, really just trying to help them, in that transition to college. So the whole college search process, application process, and making the right choices and finding the right fits for them.
Fantastic. Well, we have kind of a similar background then because I was not a professional educator. I got into
Right?
the world of scholarships working with my son and then helping friends, and that snowballed from there. So I love hearing a story like that.
Yeah, very similar, very similar.
Yeah. Yep. And I work with a lot of homeschoolers. In fact, this year, like I've just been inundated with homeschoolers. I guess maybe they're
Really?
all talking to each other. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
they
Yeah.
do talk a lot.
Yeah. Yep. That's good though. Well, one of the things I found really intriguing when we first got connected was as I was perusing your website, your mission statement. I want to read it exactly verbatim. Says average families with average teens. So why was that important to you to emphasize?
When I looked at the information that was out there, the college services landscape seemed to me like it was dominated by kind of the extremes. So
Hmm.
there's rightfully been a push recently, in recent years, to help more first generation and low income students
Sure.
realize a college education, the dream of a college education. And that's super important.
Hmm.
Totally support that. I work with some of those students. On the other end of the spectrum, we have something like the Varsity Blues scandal,
Yeah.
where, unfortunately, a lot of people associate that with the type of work that I do as an IEC. This type of work is maybe only for the very wealthy who are looking at elite colleges.
Hmm.
In some sense, I think a lot of people view it as a way to game the system.
Yeah.
That can be true, but as a general rule, the stereotype is not true. Most IECs work with a wide variety of students, not just those on the extremes. But when I considered my personal practice and kind of getting started, I looked at, where do I want to focus and also where is the most experience that I have. And the experience I have is mostly working with families like mine because
Mhm.
as a homeschooler, I did a lot of mentoring, just working with homeschool families on various aspects of education. And as my oldest graduated and went to college, people started saying, "Hey, how did that work? What do you do?" And so, though, I started working with families in that capacity, and
Mhm.
so I was just really drawn to helping students who are like my own kids, like the ones in my community. I don't live in a major metro area, so
Okay.
IECs are not as common here.
Uh-huh.
Most of the kids here aren't looking at top 25 schools. They're just regular, bright kids. They've got families that do well, they do fine for themselves, but they're not, top earning 1% families. They've got respectable resumes, but they don't have, amazing stats or some really compelling backstory. They're
Hmm.
just average, everyday teenagers. But they still get overwhelmed by the process.
Yeah, sure.
They still need that guidance. Their parents are busy. They're usually working full time, and their school counselors are busy because they've just got an overwhelming caseload. And so I wanted to make it clear that my practice exists to help make the college search accessible for families that are in kind of that messy middle where they
Hmm.
sometimes a little bit fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
But
Well,
there's a whole bunch of them out there.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean that again speaks to me because just like you, I love working with anybody, but people at the upper end of the income scale, they can afford to go to college without student loans, and then
Right.
people on the lower end, there's lots of programs, and that's fantastic. And it is, those families in the middle who, especially with outside scholarships, can really, kind of move that needle. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, very much
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
Definitely.
Well, the admissions process is obviously painted as very high stakes, ultra competitive, and I know that is the case to some degree, especially maybe at that upper end of
Yeah.
students with perfect SATs or perfect GPAs. But how does that is that true for students who are more in the middle there?
No, it overall it's not. It is true at that very tippy top level.
Yeah.
But really, when I talk to families who are sort of more in the middle, what I encourage them to do in the beginning is to let go of the idea that their options are limited. And that
Hmm.
can look like a couple of different things. For some people, it really is, they think they have to go to a top 25 school. It has to be elite or it's not worth doing. Like, nothing else, everything else is subpar.
Yeah.
For others, they're maybe only considering, a couple of schools, often they're public schools, because that's just what they know. It's where
Yep.
people they know have gone. It's the place they think they can afford. It's the place they think they can get in. And so they have already locked themselves into a box, but there are thousands of colleges in the United States.
Yeah.
And students can thrive in lots of different places. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be the one single, kind of soulmate college. So we are looking for the best fits, right? I mean, we're looking at academics, we're looking at socially, we're looking at financially for most
Yeah.
of my families. But at the end of the day, college in a lot of ways is what you make of it. People graduate from lesser known schools and go on to great success. Many
Sure.
people do. So I try to encourage my students to broaden their horizons a little bit, consider a wide range of colleges. It doesn't necessarily have to be a wide geographic area. A lot of my
Hmm.
students like to stay fairly close to home. But then to choose the places where they can make the best use of the opportunities that are available to them at that school. Those are going to be the schools that are going to be good fits.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the hardest school you can get into. A lot
Right.
of times it's better to be a big fish in a little pond,
Yeah. Yep.
than to just be one of many people with a perfect SAT score, even if you
Yeah.
happen to have one. So there are a lot of misconceptions, I think, and I do try to encourage, kind of starting with a blank slate, and let's not
Hmm.
try to have too many preconceived notions.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, obviously, my ears perked up when you talked about things like the financial aspect and affordability. Is there, obviously, I focus a lot on scholarships, particularly outside scholarships, but are
Yeah.
there any strategies or tactics that you could recommend? Again, maybe focusing more on these families and students who are in the middle to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
college affordable.
Absolutely. There are lots of strategies, and scholarships obviously are a great strategy, and free money is always, the best the
Yeah.
best thing if you can get that. Again, I really encourage my students not to fall in love, just sort of let go of this idea of a dream school in the
Hmm.
beginning. It's kind of like
Hmm.
buying a house when you start shopping for houses and they tell you like be really careful about looking things that are out of your price range because if you
Yeah.
fall in love, you may make decisions that aren't the smartest.
Yep. Yep.
I think the most effective thing you can do is apply strategically.
Hmm.
Choosing schools that are a good match for you, where your students can be competitive for admission, but also where they're going to be competitive for financial aid. And
Yeah.
that might be need-based aid. It might be merit aid. It just kind of depends on the family situation. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing.
Yep.
But that's first and foremost. My strategy is to say, let's take a look at the colleges and see which ones are your best bets. Um, I do encourage families to think about the return on investment. I'm not a fan of debt myself. It's our family, it's been important to us that we try to avoid debt if at all possible.
Hmm.
But I do think there is a reasonable way to carry a little bit of student loan debt for the right degree if the
Hmm.
return is there. Will it pay for itself? But you do have to be objective and realistic about
Yeah.
is this degree going to actually have the potential to cover this kind of loan. But I really like things like dual enrollment, alternative credit, credit by exam. There
Yeah.
are so many options for getting low cost or even free college credit before you graduate from high school, and
Yep.
that's one of the best ways you can have a guarantee that you're going to be able to bring that cost down somewhat. It could be as much as 2 years in some cases.
Yeah.
My experience is it's not always as seamless as people would like it to be or as it gets sold, but it really does have some good potential for taking some time off of the amount of time that you have to spend earning a degree, which obviously the quicker it goes, the less it costs.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
for most families, I find that it's, you need a combination of strategies.
Sure. Yeah.
And, so definitely scholarships are in there and your merit-based and need-based aid is in there. But for families that can take advantage of alternative ways to earn credit, that's something I specialize in and I help people figure out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a huge fan of dual enrollment and AP and CLEP and any of these avenues for students to get college credit. And like you said, it the credit will vary from school to school.
Mhm.
Sometimes it might just say no, period,
Right.
right? And at the other extreme, they're going to be like, yeah, that's a perfect match for biology 101. You don't have to take it anymore. And
Yep.
then there's things in the middle. But even if every one of those that your student took it didn't translate to getting college credit, there's still benefit, right? It's more
Absolutely.
academically rigorous. It's going to help with college admissions. It potentially will
Yep.
help with scholarships. So, yeah, the financial aspect is great, but it's not the only benefit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think it's great for any student that can take advantage of it
Yeah,
um,
yep.
in any way that they're able to.
Well, we mentioned that you work with a lot of homeschool families, and you were homeschooling mom yourself. That means for most homeschoolers that they're kind of also have another hat, and that is that of the guidance counselor.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how that fits into college admissions and college prep?
Absolutely, absolutely. I tell homeschoolers all the time. I think one thing, maybe the biggest thing that homeschooling parents who are teaching high school don't realize is that as a homeschooler, when your kid gets ready to apply to college, you essentially have to apply too. And
Okay.
that it really can blindside you if you're not prepared for it. It blindsided me, but it fortunately blindsided me early. And so I was able
Okay.
to
Yeah.
recover.
Uh-huh.
The problem with college application season is that it's really stressful for the whole family, right? It, it,
Yeah.
it impacts your entire family. You've been there, I've been there. Like it really
Yep.
impacts the whole family. And you've got these big decisions looming, and you're dealing with the anxiety of a teenager who's maybe a little worried and scared about what's
Yeah.
coming, and then you're dealing with your own emotions as a parent because
Right.
it's bittersweet, right? Senior
Yeah.
year is tough.
Yeah.
And all of those things tend to be what the family focuses on,
Hmm.
because that's where all of your energy is going. But most of us forget that the school is also playing a big role in the college application process, and so much is going on behind the scenes in a school counselor's office. They're taking care of transcripts, and they're writing a school profile, and they're writing letters of recommendation. All of that kind of stuff. They're communicating with colleges on the student's behalf or the school's behalf. Homeschooling parent counselors have to do all of that. They have to
Yeah.
manage the
Yep.
family piece, but they also have to handle the school piece. And there's a whole process of application that's really for the parent to complete as the counselor, on top of the usual work as a parent of helping your student complete their own applications. So, part of what I offer homeschooling families is support with that counselor role.
Okay.
So coaching them, teaching them how to think like a school and not just a home, because we're
Mhm.
really two pieces, right?
Right.
So that can look like helping you translate your child's unique, very often outside the box education as a
Right.
homeschooler into a language that colleges can understand,
Hmm.
because they don't have anything to compare you to. You're a
Right.
single student, right?
Yeah.
In a single school with no track record.
Hmm.
So how do you tell your homeschool story in a way that's compelling and highlights your students' strengths and your own educational philosophy? Just what are the requirements for documentation? What are colleges expecting to see in order
Right.
to
Right.
better evaluate your student? A lot of people don't know what the colleges expect.
Yep.
Sometimes I'm just sort of a listening ear from another mom who has been there, and has been through the stress and understands all of the emotional piece involved, because
Hmm.
writing recommendation letters for a student that you've taught for a semester or even a few different classes is one thing, and that can be tough. Writing a letter of recommendation for your own kid is
Right.
a whole different ball game. You just better bring your tissues. It's
Yeah.
you're looking back, at
Yeah.
your child's whole childhood, and you've got all of these emotional things that you have to deal with. So that's part of what I do, is just sort of provide some of that support for families who suddenly find that they have another new role to play that they weren't necessarily expecting to have. The
Yeah.
parent side is a big focus of my practice with homeschooling
Okay.
families.
That's awesome.
Um,
As you were talking, I just wanted to mention because I'm guessing probably most of my audience are not homeschool families, and um, one of the things that has really jumped out to me in the last year or so is that parents with students in public or private school, yes, they have a guidance counselor, but you still kind of have to wear that hat as the
yeah.
parent. Like, it, I'm kind of surprised by how many parents don't know how to get their kids transcript. Like,
Right.
you need to know that as early as possible, and you
Right.
should be pulling that transcript, I think, every semester. Just
I would agree.
unofficial, something that you have at home. You should know your kid's GPA from semester to semester. You don't
Yeah.
need to know 3.5421, to the infinite, but
Yeah.
okay, a 3.2. You just
Right.
have that rough idea in your head. Now, you may need to know to like the second decimal for some specific purpose, but you should just have a rough idea of things like your kid's
Sure.
GPA, just so you
Class
can
rank. Yep.
class rank, things like that. Yeah, absolutely. And definitely, especially for parents who are listening whose kids are just starting high school or, younger than senior year, please find out where you get those resources. Most schools, it's very simple. You just jump on the website or a portal and you
Mhm.
can print it off, but you need to know how to do that and you need those kinds of things at your fingertips.
I absolutely agree. And I think if you can schedule a meeting early on with your counselor and your
Yeah.
student, everybody
Yep.
together, talk about what resources are available and
Yep.
what are they able to offer your child, because sometimes they can offer a whole lot. If you're lucky to attend, a small private school, sometimes you get a lot of support. Sometimes it's going to be like, I barely even have time to have this meeting with you as a freshman.
Yes. Yep.
So this is going to be on you and you're going to have to figure it out. That's where I come in a lot of times and you come in
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But that is the reality for a lot of students in schools.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we've talked about how stressful and anxiety filled the admissions process can be. Given that, can you talk a little bit about maybe some strategies for students and I guess parents as well to kind of narrow down college
Yeah,
choices? I mean, there's
sure.
what, over 4,000 colleges in the country, so that's a lot of options.
It is a lot of options. Like I kind of referenced before, my experience a lot of times is that families often come into the process with really too narrow of a focus,
Okay.
especially if they have concerns about paying for college,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you only know what you know, right? And if you're not in this space, you don't even know what options are out there, and so you tend to go with what's comfortable, where you think, like I said, either you can get in easily, it would be more affordable, that sort of thing. But I really think that in order to narrow down effectively, because you do have to narrow down, and find the right fit, and again, fit, I'm thinking academics, social, financial, all of those pieces. I actually suggest kind of starting with your options as wide open as you possibly can. So
Okay.
this goes back to what I said before. It's throwing out your preconceived notion of what a good school is.
Hmm.
Getting rid of any concept that there's going to be like a dream school, a soulmate school that you're
Yeah.
gonna connect with, and it's just
Yep.
that's going to be it, right? Because the last thing you want to do is fall in love, because parents fall in love too.
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
Fall in love, or have your kid fall in love with a school that turns out not to be a good fit for whatever reason, financially or otherwise. That's a good way to end up with a student who is ready to transfer at the end of the first semester because
Hmm.
it wasn't what they thought it was.
Yep.
So, like we've said, you can have success at lots of different places. It's better early on to have that open mind about what might be a good fit for your particular student, and not
Yeah.
just what's a good school overall. Not get You don't want to, you want to maintain a level of objectivity for a while at
Of
least,
course.
so that you don't get locked into too narrow of a pool too early on. But when you're really talking about narrowing down and getting started, I always think the first and most important place to start is with your particular student.
Hmm.
Who you want to think about who they are, what motivates them, what kind of environments they tend to thrive in academically, where they thrive socially. The good news is that as a parent, you've had, going on 18 years of observation. So you probably have a good idea of a lot of those things if you just think about
Yeah.
it a little bit.
Yep.
But you also want to go through this process of helping your teen figure all of that out for themselves as well, because
Yeah.
they need ownership in this process.
Right.
They need to be comfortable with what's happening. You're not going to make this decision for them. So they need to sort of have that self-exploration. So I recommend lots of conversations as early as you can start them, eighth, ninth grade, not too
Yeah.
early.
Yep.
For parents, it can be really easy to want to jump in and start giving advice right away. And I try to encourage parents, sort of pull back a little bit, try to just be curious about what
Hmm.
your child is saying as you talk, let them talk as much as you can. One of the first things I like to ask a new student that I'm working with is this question, when you picture yourself at college, what does that look like? What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What's happening? What is the setting? You can learn a whole lot about what the college experience means to them,
Yeah. Hmm.
and what they value most and what they want to get out of college, from that one question. And then you can build from there. There are all kinds of different traits that might end up being important to your student. The size of the campus or the student body is often a big factor. Geographic location or distance from home. Maybe you
Hmm.
don't want to go too far. Maybe you want to go as far away as possible.
Yeah.
um, you know, do you want to be in the big city? Do you want to be rural? Do you want something in between? Those are all aspects you can explore with your teenager just in a conversational way, that helps you all together as a family start narrowing down the different traits that may be important to a good fit college. I really like a resource called Coursava,
Okay.
Corsava. It's an online interactive platform. It has these different cards that demonstrate different traits of colleges, and so it
Hmm.
has the student sort the different traits according to their level of importance to that
Okay.
individual student. It's a really great way to start conversations. You can have your student do the sort, and then you can talk about, well, why did you put this here, and what does this mean to you? Um, it's a really great way to kind of get the ball rolling and to think about open conversations. It's not it's like a personality test. It's not necessarily scientific. It's a way to
Uh-huh.
open the
Yeah.
door so that you have things that you can talk about.
Oh, that's very
So
cool.
yeah, that's one of my favorite resources.
Yeah. So when a student uses this tool, does it spit out a list of colleges that match the student, or does
Yes,
it not go that far?
it does. It does make suggestions, and you can actually, I haven't used it this way. I think the student can actually use it as a way to sort of track information. I believe it has a place they can make their own
Hmm.
notes. So if they
Okay.
visit or research a school, I think there are some sort of, it's maybe not the most robust tool out there, but it can be used that way if that's helpful. And
That's
I think
cool.
it's helpful for parents too, because there's all sorts of aspects that you wouldn't necessarily think about. Things that are in the classroom, things that have to do with campus life, all
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll get the link for that because nobody's ever brought that up before,
Oh,
so you're
okay.
breaking
Yeah.
new ground here.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
corsava.com.
Okay.
So easy to find, but I'll be happy to send you the link.
Awesome. Well, as we're getting close to time here, do you maybe have one more piece of advice for families who are getting started on the college admissions journey?
That's hard.
Yeah,
That's a tough question.
yeah, yep.
To narrow it down, I think the broadest, sort of sum it up idea that I would say is try to think of this process beyond just getting into college.
Yeah, yeah,
It's so easy to make it college admissions like the finish line, and senior year overall feels like a finish line. It is a
mm,
finish line in some ways,
sure.
but
Yep, yep,
college isn't the finish line. It's just the first step,
yep.
on your teen's future. So it doesn't have to carry maybe quite the significance that people give it, where it becomes
Hmm.
so emotionally fraught. I find that families who look at the whole journey, admission to college, affordability, but then also getting through college to graduation, which can be much more of a challenge for some
Sure.
students than
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
in, and then getting launched into your adult life.
Mhm.
They make smarter choices and have less stress when they look at it that way. It's not the be all end all decision. It's the first in a long line of decisions that
Hmm.
you are going to make as an adult, and you're
Right.
coming into your own here, and you have the support around you. You're not doing it by yourself. So it does need to be a thoughtful decision, of course,
Sure.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a perfect one. Life is never a straight path for anybody. It won't be for your child either.
Yep.
And so, at some point, everybody has to pivot, and you can trust yourself to guide your child, trust your child to, pivot when necessary, make the
Hmm.
best decision you can with the information you have today, and then cross the bridges that come when they get here. So look at the big picture, play the long game. Don't get too caught up in, just this one decision. It's just one
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. And that's a great point that you make, that getting in is the first step, not the last step.
Right.
And you really need to think about all the steps that are beyond that. And frankly, why is the student even going to college? Like, you need
Exactly.
to kind of answer that before even thinking about going, right?
Well, and parents and students often have very different ideas about why
Mm.
they're going to college.
Yeah.
So, I think that's an important part of those early conversations is, why do you want your child to go to college? Why does your child want to go to college?
Yeah.
And how do we reconcile those things so that everybody's being heard and
Hmm.
getting their needs met? Because those are your perspective at 17 and your perspective at, 40, 50 something is not the same, and they
Yeah.
both are valid. So,
Sure.
everybody needs
Yeah.
to be part of that conversation. We're all on a team. You're all working together.
Right.
It's
Right.
a collaborative
Yeah.
effort.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, for people who would like to work with you, can you just talk a little bit about the kind of services you offer, and then, of course, where people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I focus a lot of my efforts on college admissions, like we've talked about, focus a lot of things on helping homeschoolers. So I have some packages that are posted on my website, which is at yourguidancecounselor.com. There is no
Fantastic URL, by the
www
way.
there. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
There is no www there. It
Okay.
just starts with the yourguidancecounselor.com. This is what happens when you're a small business owner who doesn't know enough about tech. You end up with a wonky URL. um, so I do have some package offerings, but I also customize. I really try to tailor my work
Hmm.
to what students need. So sometimes it's just talking about. I know where I'm going to college, but I don't know what I major in. I don't know what I want to major in. So let's
Okay.
talk through that. Or, I'm open to working with students in whatever capacity is most helpful to them. Um,
Fantastic.
I also have a Substack
Oh,
if that's
okay.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of, it's totally free. I
Yeah.
don't monetize my Substack. So
Yep.
that's yourguidancecounselor.substack.com. So it's a good place
Fantastic.
to
Well,
start if you just want some tips.
yeah. Yep. As a fellow Substacker,
Yeah.
that's good to know. Well, Whitney, thank you so much. Very, very helpful information.
Great.
And I will put links to yourguidancecounselor.com in the show notes.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
coming on, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.